Okay.
Okay, and so the topic is the Bohemian take on the Gaza Strip conflict, and in regards to that, I would say that those guys there fighting, they're all the same people, right? But they've decided that to take on these identities because of their belief systems, and they've basically decided to believe that they are somehow different because of their belief systems, that they're somehow separate from the other people, and that somehow they should, in fact, have a war based on belief systems. And then their children have become so entrapped in that they've created a physical version of that where they've created borders and segregations so that they end up just in these worlds where just because of their belief systems, they're different. But in fact, if you took them all to an island, then they would all be the same brothers. And, when they immigrate to other countries, they all get along. Everyone gets along. There's many multicultural countries where different countries that don't normally get along in situ do get along outside in the wider world community, like in the backpackers and everything. You might have like all the different nationalities. They all get along. Nobody's fighting. So it is possible for them to get along. But I would say as a Bohemian, we would have just let the people that have come in recently, in the recent history, we would have just let them in, just like we've let in every other country, and just make peace with it and be peaceful and get along and make the best of that situation, and not have this division in thought and in philosophies divide us to the point where we want to like segregate each other and just believe that we're like somehow superior or inferior based on our belief systems. Yeah, that's what I think as a Bohemian I would say. What would you say?
I think it's can kind of be used as a metaphor for it's almost like all of human challenge in every country, because in almost every place that we know about, there's the challenge of how do we live, and how do we live with the new people and the people who are there before us. And it's a huge thing, like everyone, and it all really does come down to how you think about things, how you think about how do we live together, and how do we share resources, how do we have control in a way that's easygoing, I guess, or structure in a way that everyone's taken care of.
Yeah, and integrate the new culture into the existing culture in a way that everyone can get along.
In a way that resources and the place that sustains everybody is taken care of. So that's something that, obviously hasn't happened a lot of the time. I find it really interesting, like with these international conflicts, how they get a hold of everyone's mindset. And people will be very invested in something that's happening someplace that they can't physically see, or they can't actually hear the stories from the real place, from the real people. And yet, because of the media and stories that are coming through, they will become very invested and get very emotionally involved and give a lot of their life to it, really.
And a lot of their thoughts.
And I think it's very programmed. Like, this conflict's been going on, the Gaza conflict's been going on for so long. Maybe not at the intensity as recently, but it has been there a long time. And no one in Australia really, in day-to-day, was talking about it a year ago. It was all on the different topic that everyone was being fed, which at the time I think was the Ukraine issue.
And COVID,
And before that, COVID, before that, the bushfires. But I don't know that the everyday person is very aware that they're just repeating what's being fed to them, as opposed to having their own inner feeling about a topic and responding to that in their own way.
Yeah, it's just almost the very presentation of the topic into their life. They take the way it's being presented as part of the topic. It's not just like they don't look it up and look at facts of like this happened. It's presented with a certain bias, and then that bias is adopted by the people, the viewers who watch that bias, and it creates this interesting. I being in the special forces, I was once had this interesting conversation with another special forces guy, and he said to me, like, I said to him, like, why would we go to Iraq to kill people? And he said to me, "Oh, because they're really bad people, and they they all need to be wiped out." And I said to him, like, "Yeah, but have you ever talked with an Iraqi person, like, to actually discover for yourself, to get your own opinion?" And he said to me this fascinating thing. He said to me, "I wouldn't want to." So it was this sort of
Yeah,
like this.
it's they know
this
they're only getting
incredible-
one side, and yet
Yeah.
they're willing to take one side.
Yeah, and totally
Or-
like go with it and kill.
When
over
often
it.
there's numerous sides to a topic, like numerous perspectives on a topic. I mean, I personally had a big challenge when the COVID thing was starting. There was all these different rules happening, and people were feeling different ways about the situation here in Australia. And people were saying things about what was happening at the border in Queensland, New South Wales, which is an hour drive away. And it was like, oh, there's going to be this, all the truckies are having a big
Oh, that's
protest.
right. Yeah.
They're all going to be at the border, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, no, nothing happened. It didn't happen. And we were living in Byron. And then a friend drove up there to visit someone, and they were like, yeah, there's 100 trucks at the border.
Oh, and they didn't.
And it
report
wasn't being reported. And because it wasn't being reported on the
yeah.
news that we're used to trusting,
Yeah, it didn't happen.
people, as far as
Yeah.
people were concerned, it wasn't happening, even though we lived right here, an hour drive away. I thought that was fascinating.
And vice versa. My grandma was telling me, or my mum, or somebody was telling me that in Czechoslovakia during the era of the occupation of the Russians, there was this situation where all over the world there was news, and including in the Czech Republic, all over the news was that there's this crazy riot going on in the city. This whole city's like going crazy. There's protests. There's all of this
Prague,
stuff
is that
in Prague.
right?
But then grandpa or whoever was there, like a family member, was in there, and he was there all day working or whatever, and he come back, and grandma's like, "Oh, dear, how come you didn't get killed in the conflict? That was just terrible." And he's like, "What conflict? There wasn't anybody there." It was like,
Exactly.
and it was just
Exactly.
like, but unless
Yeah.
you like experience
See-
that real life version of it, you just think it's a conspiracy. You know what I mean? You just think, no, like that can't happen. That surely they wouldn't make it up or something.
Yeah,
But
everyone
it's
else
like,
is telling this story.
there's
That
an
must
agenda,
be true,
yeah.
even though, yeah, and again, like very small scale. And around that same time of that COVID thing, there was a protest in Mullen one day, a silent protest at the council chambers with
Yeah,
a few
yeah,
hundred
yeah.
people. Very peaceful. It went for like 3 hours. There was someone holding space in the centre with a small, I don't know, maybe not a fire, but like a little circle in the centre. And there were police everywhere on all the four corners, and maybe they wrote a fine for one person. Like they really didn't interfere. And then at the end, everyone dispersed and went about their day. And I went again home, so 20-minute drive away home, and someone said, a similar way, but very small scale, "Oh, I heard that heaps of people were arrested,
Yep.
it was really intense." And we were like, no, we were there, and it was really mellow, like there was nothing going on. But because this person was really caught up in
believing
the dramatisation of
yeah,
everything that
yeah.
had been fed through news sources online and through the media, through television, that's what he believed about what had happened that day. So this is on the day, in the same, almost the same suburb. And then you think, well, once a news story travels across the world or goes a couple decades down the line, how
Accurate is
different
it?
could
Yeah.
that be?
Yeah.
It could be hugely different to what really happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know in so many times that, but I understand the perspective of the cameraman and the news crew, because they're basically, their job is to capture some interesting thing. And if they just say, all right, people, nothing really happened, it was all this thing, they're not gonna, you know what I mean? Nobody's
not much
gonna,
of a
no, it's not
story.
gonna make the news, right? And that's that whole thing. It's like, how many of your stories make the news? How much of your footage is shown, right? That's what they thrive on, right? That's their whole like A plus.
Or do you think it's a different thing? Do you think maybe the news outlets are saying, this is the story we'd like to tell, go and see what you can find?
Well, exactly, yeah, but I
Or
mean,
a bit of both, maybe.
yeah, but it's always going to be the drama that they're looking
Yeah,
for.
of
Always,
course.
always going to be the conflict, and so I would even think that even and like us, me as a person who films things, I would think even I would do that though. I would have a tendency to do that.
Would you
even-
plant things? Would you
No,
plant
no,
people and
no.
would you tell them to dramatise it?
No, well, not to that extent. You're right. I mean, not to
But
that
it's very
extent,
easy
but
to do.
but it is something that we would, I guess, look and try and film the actual issues, the dramas, and then because that's all that would be presented of this happened, people wouldn't see. Yeah, but that was like 1/100th of the time period. That was the
Yeah, yeah,
case.
exactly.
But
That was
because
the
you filmed it for
dramatic
1 minute,
moment.
yeah, then
yeah.
you give this skewed perspective that.
And I was just going to say, like, what do you think about the thing where it, these sort of stories that are so dramatized, or it captures that like moment, which is very emotional usually, and like invokes this strong emotion. How do you feel about like the everyday person getting caught up in that, regardless of which side you're on or what you're, who you think's right or wrong, but like all that energy of your day that could go to gardening or spending time with your children or
Well, mainly just
other
being
things, but then suddenly it's
Yep,
caught up in this
yep.
like, oh, people
This
are bad,
stress,
there's
like,
all
yep,
this
yep.
horrible stuff happening.
and
or-
it's stress. It's stress.
It can
creates this
create stress,
which doesn't have to be there, which is this stress that's derived from just being stressed because there's something going wrong in the world, which is always going to be something going on wrong in the world. And then people, in fact, feel like they need to see it. They need to see, oh, what's happened
What
there?
happened
What's happened?
next?
Yeah, what happened next?
Yeah.
And then you end up with this situation where they're all like hunting for it, and you think that's not making you happy. Seeing that somebody just got their head blown off, somebody's just got killed. So I think that it's to their detriment. It creates stress, creates this reason why that person that goes out and says, "Oh, the world's just screwed and it's all bad," and you know what I
Yeah,
mean,
and it
has
can
this,
have a big-
has
I mean-
this negative view of the world.
I
because of
remember
that.
as a teenager, I felt super, upset about the state of things. Probably because I hadn't stepped a couple steps back to see all the different perspectives yet, because they weren't being given to me really. And I see that in young people a little bit now. Like they seem so upset about the state of the world, and the environmental issues or the fighting issues, and they can become really consumed by it. When to the greater extent,
They
like
can't
being
really-
in that
yeah.
state doesn't help
No,
them.
no,
It
it
doesn't
doesn't
help the
help.
people around
Yeah.
them. It doesn't help them grow to be
It doesn't even help that
efficient
particular
or
issue.
effective or
Like that issue
positive
doesn't get
people.
resolved
No,
by
exactly.
like just because people are like
Yeah.
upset about these issues. So I think that that bias in the news, which is definitely happening. I think with the conflict that's happening in the Gaza Strip, and also what's not being shown, what is being shown, how it's being presented, what effect it has on the people, and how those people just end up then the whole world being stressed, and also the armament industry, which then profits from it because everyone's thinking, oh yeah, there is a real chance that we'll be invaded, and so we better like support the military, and there's all these issues that flow from that
Do you
stress, right?
do you know people over there, like either in Gaza or in Israel?
No.
No.
I know lots of people that are from there that are living here, but not
Yeah.
not somebody that's been there like during that time, not directly.
I had a couple months ago I would visit a couple friends, and one had family in Israel and the other lived very close by, and they would just be sort of going off the news feed and had like almost opposite perspectives about what was going on.
Interesting.
So the person
Yeah.
with family in Israel was like, the war is very real, like my family is in trouble, and they were sort of praying for peace, and their heart was in the right place for sure, peace for everybody. But at the same time, they were giving a lot of emotion to that conflict. And the same with the other person. They were going off the news feed, and it's like, oh my God, like look what's happening in Gaza. And they were giving their emotion to the conflict too. But it was interesting because I would have this like juxtaposition of those two sides in a very short space of time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, I guess that could be it. Yeah, that could be our little
Very interesting little topic.
topic. Yeah.